Hello and welcome to the Week 3 Monster Pod presented by TheLines.com. Matt Brown, Steven Andress. Joined this week, Ryan Noonan from 4 for 4. If you haven't checked their stuff out, you have to get over there. It's not just betting. Also get in on DFS content, projections, fantasy football, everything you're looking for over there. Ryan, glad to have you back this week, buddy, and heading into week number 3 after a pretty chaotic week number 1 and 2.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. I mean, it's just a triage of injuries all across the league. So I'm excited to see how we kind of parse through some of that stuff today. But yeah, good to be back with you fellas. You guys had to suffer through Connor last week. I'm sorry. Sometimes just like, just no personality. He means well, but, just dry. He's out there golfing right now. Connor's in like the wedding season age where like everyone gets married. So we've suffered through this the last few years where he's just always out of town every weekend. This morning, he's on some sort of golf wedding getaway. So I don't know if it's, like pre-bachelor party
or
something.
Reevaluate that friend, Ryan, for having a wedding weekend in the middle of football season.
That's absolutely a good point. That's a good point. But it's he's parlayed it into Friday morning golf, Steven, and we're here in our basements talking about football. So he's doing something right.
Apparently we're the suckers.
I agree.
Chicago Bears and the Indianapolis Colts kicks things off, and this is 1.5 to 2 points in favor of the Colts at home over the Bears. 43.5 is our total. So I came into the season, Stephen, with the preconceived notion that Anthony Richardson wasn't any good. Through 2 weeks, Anthony Richardson is trying very hard to prove me right. And the good thing is, though, is he gets Caleb Williams and the Bears coming to town with not only the third game in Caleb Williams' young career, but an injury situation to Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Nate Davis, Montez Sweat, DeMarcus Walker. The list goes on and on. So tons and tons of stuff that they're dealing with over there on the Bears side of things. So maybe the Colts are able to pull this all out. It's a game to me that isn't very bettable. I don't think that there's a lot for me to like in this one. Whenever I look again at the Colts, I don't think the defense is going to be good enough to overcome the shortcomings of Anthony Richardson. And so with that on a week-to-week basis, I don't know how often I'm going to bet the Colts because I think you're going to get your heart broken a ton with that. And so maybe they change my mind over the next few weeks, but I'm kind of in an evaluation period here on the Colts. How did you look at this one?
Yeah, it seems our staff's fairly split on this. You and Derek Wagner for us seem to lean the Bears here because of the Colts and Anthony Richardson's variance. And clearly the worst unit on the field in this game to me is the Colts defense because they aren't very good when they're healthy because of the scheme. And now they're injured on top of it. DeVaris Buckner's not going to play. So if Caleb Williams is ever going to have, a league average week at the beginning of his career, you'd think this is a great shot to do it against the Indianapolis Colts defense. And then on the flip side, you have another smart guy, Judah Fortgang, who just thinks that Caleb Williams is going to be bad right now. It's 2 weeks. Yes, it was against Houston. Yes, it was against Tennessee. Two defenses I think are pretty good, but he just thinks that the stats and the production have been so bottom of the barrel that he doesn't hold out much hope for him being much better. I disagree with that, although I can't really figure out which Anthony Richardson week we're going to get any given week. So I'm not betting the side. When this was 42.5, I did bet the over because I think the Colts can move the ball with their dominant offensive line, and I think their defense is bad. So I think most weeks, if you're getting a low total here, I like the over for the Colts. But we're sitting at 43.5 right now. 43 is kind of a key-ish number. So as we record here Friday morning, unless this total comes back down, it's probably a stay away for me at the current numbers.
Ryan, a couple of interesting teams to try to evaluate here as we head into week number 3. How do you see this game going?
Still holding out hope on Anthony Richardson. We'll see how that plays out. It's going to get harder, though, because of things that are outside of his control. As Steven was touching on there, the defense is in really bad shape. Probably had some question marks coming into the season. They were really relying heavily on Juju Brents, a second-year corner, to be their number one corner, and he is lost for the season right away. DeForest Buckner, absolute difference maker in the middle. He's on IR. This team was dead last in blitz rate last season, but we've seen them blitz nearly twice as much through the first 2 games, and that's really their only shot of generating pressure and getting home right now. And everyone and their mother saw what happened on Sunday night in an island game where the Texans were able to just demolish the interior of that Bears offensive line, and Caleb looked unsettled, to put it, I guess, kindly. But this is a massive stretch for the Bears. So I would like to see them hopefully get healthy here. Let's get Keenan back on the field. He hasn't practiced since the Friday before the opener. Do we have a healthy Roma Dunze? Is there something there? You kind of rattled off some questions in terms of availability on the defensive side. I think all those guys play because that is the best unit probably in this game is this Bears defense. I think they are legit. But look what the Bears have coming up in terms of opponents, especially defensively. Indy, they play the Rams, Panthers, Jags, who I don't think are very good, Commanders, Cardinals, and Patriots, all the next basically until we get to like week 9 or week 10. This is make or break season. Even in a rookie season for Caleb Williams, you have to kind of show a pulse here a little bit. In terms of this game, I'm kind of with you, Matt, kind of stay away, kind of want to wait and see. I do kind of believe in both these quarterbacks long-term. It hasn't been really good so far, but I also agree. I think the Titans, that defense might end up being pretty good. Their coordinator's coming from the, McDonald tree, which I think matters a lot. And then I think obviously the Texans are a real contender. So Bears are maybe an interesting, like Wong teaser leg, if that's of interest to you. But again, kind of a stay away. Again, we have a full board, so we don't have to go everywhere.
Yes, that is. They have to post them all, but we don't have to bet them all. So
Correct.
that's the one advantage that we have here on all this. To close things off, I was pretty disappointed last week when the Colts, needed to move the ball against the Packers, and we were not getting any Anthony Richardson designed run calls at all. And like as bad as the offense was performing, I didn't understand that either, which also gives me a little bit of pause. I'm like, wait a minute, you said you were going to let him do what he does best and everything was going to be fine. And then we didn't get really any of that against the Packers, even when they weren't able to move the ball. So now I'm even questioning what they're doing with him there too. So a lot for me to kind of unpack here over the next couple of weeks and see how they're going to let Anthony Richardson do his thing. New York Football Giants and the Cleveland Browns. This is 6.5 in favor of the Browns at home over the Giants, 39.5 across the board. Ryan, we said last week when we were on the pod when you were away, it was kind of like, okay, Daniel Jones, if not this week, then when? And while he was able to navigate them to 3 touchdowns, the first time in history a team has ever lost while scoring 3 touchdowns, having their opponent score 0, and that's a very New York Giants and Daniel Jones thing to have happen, that your kicker gets hurt and you can't get it done. Cleveland Browns haven't shown much so far, but the defense has at least been so far through this. How do you feel about them winning this game by a touchdown, though?
Yeah, that's almost a bridge too far for me, but it's also very hard because the other side means I have to back Daniel Jones on the road against Myles Garrett and company, and that is also probably a bridge too far. So luckily, Steven likes to absolutely fire at everything, so we'll probably have a take. I lean Giants, probably even a slightly stronger lean to the under. But like, I think both teams have success getting to the other team's quarterback, and that can actually sometimes lead to overs. You get turnovers and different things that can happen to bring in a whole bunch of variance that can kill an under pretty quickly. But the Browns, like, I don't know, like if we're waiting for the other shoe to drop, I don't think it's happening. I think this is what we're getting from Deshaun Watson. That's kind of sucks because this is a fun team in some other instances, but like 2 for 14 on third down. They're one of the worst teams on third downs all season long. Just a lot of question marks here. Teams have been able to really move him off their spot in terms of being able to get pressure, collapsing the interior of that offensive line against them. Really, the entire left side of the offensive line is really been one of the worst in the league when you look at like PFF grades and pressure rate allowed. So I think like Dexter Lawrence gets home for a sack here, some plus money if you're looking for a prop angle on the defensive side. So lean Giants, lean under. I don't feel good about that at all, though, but I think that's probably where I'd have to go.
Doesn't look like we're going to get David Njoku there, Steven, but everybody else was back limited first couple of days, which certainly is a good sign, including those guys on the offensive line that had to miss. Denzel Ward, Zadarius Smith, also limited practice. So, like, we'll see how the injury report comes out later on Friday, but it looks like things are trending towards maybe the healthiest version of the Browns we've seen so far in 2024. It does give me a little bit of pause if Denzel Ward is going to be healthy in this one. I was thinking about just going back for a third week in a row and firing on my Malik Neighbors longest reception thing. It's worked the first 2 weeks. I still might when it's all said and done, because if Daniel Jones is going to give him 15 targets a game, then, hey, look, even Daniel Jones can find him at least 1 in 15 targets somewhere down the field. So again, it seems like that's about the only thing I'm confident in this one, other than the fact that I think I might be forced to play the Browns in Survivor this week, and that makes me very scared and very nervous. But I think that's probably where I'm going to have to go when it's all said and done. How are you seeing this game?
I bet the Giants.
Okay.
It touched 7 Friday morning.
Yeah, it flashed a few times. Yeah.
I grabbed it. I don't think it's the last time we'll see 7 unless Myles Garrett is ruled out. Now, we're recording Friday morning. He did have back-to-back DMPs Wednesday and Thursday. If he's not playing, then I'd still bet the Giants at 6.5. I mean, that's a big difference. And even with him in the game, not 100%, I'm not so sure the Giants' offensive line is underrated here through 2 weeks. If you look at the composite grades, they're ranking out top 10. So it's more Daniel Jones than it is the offensive line, in my opinion, which at least gives me some hope that he can get some protection against the Browns, especially if Myles Garrett is a little banged up or not playing at all. The other thing here, too, is the defense that they're facing. Through 2 weeks, the Giants have faced more too high than any offense in the league, and the Browns don't run much of that at all. So I think that helps free up Malik Neighbors potentially in man coverage. Matt, I think it helps your potential long reception prop. And it's clear to me that they're going to try and feed Malik as much as possible. I think he might be the best player on offense in this game on either side. So, and if you hate Daniel Jones, then you have to really hate Deshaun Watson at this point. I mean, I said it a couple of weeks ago. I'll say it again. Like, this guy has been one of the worst quarterbacks since 2022 in success rate. Only Zach Wilson, Bryce Young, and Davis Mills have been worse. Through 2 weeks this year, his success rate is even worse than Daniel Jones. So this is not a team I ever want to lay a touchdown with at any point this season. So last week was wonky as hell, right? It was like such a Giants way to lose a game, but it also was not really a justified loss. They should have won that game. I'm back on the train here for getting this many points against a quarterback that I have as many doubts about at this point as I do Daniel Jones.
I'll tell you this. I'm back on the train of a punter should be able to make a freaking extra point. Like in an emergency situation, like it's an emergency situation. You go to practice and you punt, you punt, you punt, you punt, you punt. Go spend 30 minutes kicking extra points at the end of practice. In an emergency situation, you can go out there and you can make a freaking extra point. Like, this is not rocket science here. I understand the mechanisms aren't exactly the same, but if you give almost anybody 6 months to practice doing anything, you can do it. And this is a professional athlete who goes out on a field every day and kicks a ball. Yes, in a different manner, but still kicks a ball. If you can't tell me through training camp that you can't train one of these punters to kick an extra point in an emergency situation, I'm calling bullshit, and I don't believe on it all. This blows me away, dude. This blows me away. I cannot stand this when they're like, oh, can't do it. No one can kick a friggin' 31-yard kick. We got to go for 2 every single time. Like, what are you talking about? This is insane. It
wasn't even like an emergency situation, too. They came into the game with him questionable. Like, right. They knew that he was dinged up and he gets hurt on the opening kickoff. Like, so they weren't completely caught off guard that he was going to be unavailable. It's mismanagement for sure.
It's just wild to me. Come on, guys, get it together. Green Bay Packers at the Tennessee Titans. This is an expensive 2.5. There are some 3s out there as well. 37.5 to 38. Thanks to all the suckers out there who thought that Jordan Love was actually going to start in this game. I'm talking to a person wearing a green shirt possibly right now, and got this thing beat down to 1.5. And when it got to 1.5, I went back for more pain with Bill Levi's, who is going to probably go out there and try to throw a left-handed pass reverse backward while doing a 360. And I'm going to figure out a way to lose this thing. But yeah, Bill Levi's back in my account this week. Steven, you were trying to make the case that Jordan Love was going to play.
All right, listen, at the time I was making these points in Discord, at that point, he had back-to-back appearances at practice versus not practicing the entire week last week. Okay. And you had the coach saying, all right, this is when my opinion changed. Okay. After practice yesterday on Thursday, LaFleur gets up there and says he'll be limited at practice Friday. The fact that he already knew that he was going to be limited on practice Friday was the tip. There was also a report that came out afterwards that said that it was Willis getting all the reps with Josh Jacobs and it was Love getting all the reps with the backup running. So another tip that he was not probably going to start this week. But all I was saying was before we had that information, before that information was available, we went from 3 DMPs last week to a couple on the field practices this week, and we need to just wait and see a little bit. And surely there was still enough time for me to go get 2.5 when the more information came out.
Can you not decode Schefter? Because like you've been doing this long enough. Whenever he gives a tweet and says like Jordan Love returns to practice, blah, 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 and he gets to the bottom and he goes, but at the very least, it's very good sign for him starting next week at whatever. That was basically him telling you without telling you that the plan was for him to play next week and not this week. You have to be able to decode Schefter. He tells you what the story actually is without telling you what the story actually is. And that's what he was telling us.
And then I waited a few more hours to make sure that he wasn't actually a full participant in practice. And I still didn't lose any value under the key number of 3. So win-win for everybody as far as I'm concerned.
Anyway, did you back Bill Levi's too?
I did. I'm in. Now that I also am convinced that Love is not playing, I'm in on Bill Levi's here. I mean, I think they've been very unlucky through 2 weeks, couple of blocked punts back-to-back weeks, couple of really boneheaded mistakes by Bill Levi's, which surely is predictive to some level. But I mean, I actually put a little bit on the Titans to make the playoffs with the Colts struggles at this point. So I think they've been one of the most unlucky teams in the league, the Tennessee Titans. And if it's Malik Willis, I'm back in on fading him.
Yeah, Ryan, he might win his name back this week. He might be able to be called Will Levis again, but until then, he's either Bill Levi's or Billy Jeans, one of the two, and like we're just going to kind of go with that. If you look at Green Bay, it was a win last week, but I mean, they did exactly what we thought they were going to do. Like,
right.
They tried to hide Malik Willis. They hit him very well because they didn't have to use him and because they were able to run at will, and it was what it was. I still think he is the stink. There was a pass that was literally 6 inches away from being taken to the house for a pick 6, and it just happened to be like 6 inches too high for the defender. All the stuff ran pretty pure last week, so I'm not buying in on the Malik Willis thing. What do you see here, Packers and Titans?
You don't think the revenge angle is something we need to be attacking here?
Yes.
The homecoming for Malik Willis? Yeah, I mean, this game is gross. It obviously, I mean, first of all, it just wouldn't be on the board, right? Like whatever you thought of whatever happened last week with the 7-point move and like how it broke people's brains for us to go from like, Packers -4 to like getting 3 at home. And it was kind of a talking point all week last week. This line would not be up if it was a Jordan Love line, right? This would be, Packers probably 2.5. And the total would probably be 41-42, right? We're, around 38 and we're, 2.5 on the other side. So definitely a Malik Willis start. I would lean Titans for sure. It's gross. But like you said, you got to, kind of buy into maybe the little bit of progress or hope that what we're seeing so far from the Titans defense is sticky. So not a lot of love for this one. Again, another boring.
Yep.
We don't have to bet it just because it's on the board kind of game. I don't have to throw my hard-earned money on Will Levis, though it probably is the right side. So Titans or nothing for me for sure.
Bill, I tell you, it might be the last time Bill ever gets my money, though. If he does it to me again this week, I mean, seriously, if he tries some sort of pirouette, like between the legs, whatever it is, and gives it up for a scoop and score, then Bill might never get my money ever again. Philadelphia Eagles on the road at the New Orleans Saints, 2.5 to 3 in this one in favor of the Saints at home. 49.5 is our total. Perhaps the biggest surprise of the short season so far is the New Orleans Saints. Clint Kubiak going to town with that offense so far with the Saints. Ryan, do you buy into what you're seeing so far, or are you looking at it as like, well, it was the Panthers and it was kind of basically like they got up so quickly on the Cowboys that it was, completely changed the game plan and the game got all out of sorts?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? Because we are dying for real information, real games to be played, because we have all these preseason priors that we kind of hammer out for 6 months. And then we get a couple of games and we're dying for that information. We can't properly contextualize it because the opponent really, really, really matters. So some of the Saints stuff is blown up because the Panthers are a pretty terrible football team. I don't think anyone's arguing the other side of that. So it is a little inflated, but I do think there's something to this, right? Like shout out to Clint Kubiak proving that not all Nepo babies are created equal. I think there's something to some of this like pre-snap play action stuff that's such a departure from the just antiquated Pete Carmichael stuff that we've seen in New Orleans for such a long time. They're doing a lot of good things to also protect an offensive line that I still think is a below average unit. But right now they've allowed the least amount of pressures in the league, the least amount of quick pressures. So pressures under 2.5 seconds. So like they're getting time to work down the field, and they've kind of unlocked Alvin Kamara, who we maybe thought was in the decline, giving Rashid Shaheed more actual snaps and targets deep down the field. Derek Carr, anytime he's been protected, he gets like kind of like a check down Charlie kind of a vibe, but he actually, in terms of like average depth of target, he's actually usually one of the top in the league. He'll take shots down the field. And it's a great spot to do it. Philly D, really struggling, 29th in yards and points per drive. Not really kind of clicking on all cylinders. Bad, obviously, finish to what we saw. Everyone's kind of talking about how they played out and made some mistakes, obviously, there at the tail end offensively with how they went for it, didn't go for it, kick a field goal. But like the defense just folded like a cheap shirt. And that's kind of a problem here too. So the Saints defense, especially against the run, has been incredible. 26.8 success rate on the ground has been one of the best in the league. So kind of buying the Saints. I think the over is probably in play here too, because I think you're going to see some teams going back, these teams going back and forth a little bit. But yeah, I think Saints are nothing for me.
Steven, I do wonder what this line would have been if the Eagles didn't crumble last week. Would be kind of be sitting at a pick 'em? Would this be like, one on either side? I don't really know how it would have gone had they been able to close out that game. People not being able to wrap their brain around how horrible a decision that was by Sirianni is just blows my mind. Like where they're defending it and going on and on, where it's like, I don't think people realize that when you leave enough time on the clock, let's call it, anywhere between that minute, just under 2 minutes, all the way to kind of like minute 30, that being up by 6 is almost worse than being up by 3, because you have given the other team plenty of time and the blueprint and game plan exactly as to how to beat you. They are going to get 4 downs every single time. And the result, if they are successful in all of this, is to beat you because they score 7 instead of the 6 that you're up, as opposed to 3, where you might actually get a little bit of conservative play call. You might not, you certainly won't get them going for it on 4th down if they're inside of field goal range. They kick the field goal, all the different things like that. Like not understanding the situational part of all of this too blows me away, that everyone's like, no, man, you always want to go up 6. And it's like, well, I mean, I understand why maybe in the surface level you would think you would always want to go up 6, but if you look at the game theory part of it and what you're handing the other team, it is free will to play with their hair on fire for the next minute and a half and go out and try to beat you, as opposed to what they would be doing should it be 3. But regardless, you run the ball, you get the 40 seconds off the clock, and maybe even go for it on 4th down again, depending on how close you are or whatever it is, to increase your win probability. You see, you have the access to our power ratings. I had the Eagles 1 heading into the season. I only put them down to 3 heading into this week. I'm not going to overreact to one horrible brain fart that we get from a head coach. I'm still not completely bought in on the Saints. I think they are much better and much higher than I had them. They are the highest mover in my power ratings by far. It's not even close. I was so far down on them that I think that they deserve to be higher and deserve to be where they are. But just based off of where I'm at and the fact that I'm not willing to move too far off the priors on the Eagles, I had to take the 3 with the Eagles at the field goal. That's just where my numbers add up in all of this, but I do need to see a little bit more life out of this team on the road. That's for sure.
I don't disagree with the market moving the Saints to a top 10 team all of a sudden. I don't disagree with that. Everything that we thought about them coming into the season looks wrong. I mean, the offensive line looks
certainly me.
fine.
I might be the wrongest person in America on this Saints team. Like I was like so down on them. I was like, hey, they might be the worst team in that division. Like the Panthers might be better than them. And look where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, the market had them as a bottom 10 team in the league, and now through 2 weeks, the market has them as a top 10 team. And the biggest issue I had was the offensive line, and that clearly has been mitigated. I mean, something about this Kyle Shanahan type offense that really makes it so that if you could have 3, mediocre at best offensive linemen, it doesn't seem to matter. I've been listening to some people. It's something with this outside zone run scheme. It takes pressure off the tackles, apparently. So credit to them. And honestly, Fashanu looks amazing. I mean, he's been one of the, not Fashanu, forgot his name. Sorry. But like the rookie looks incredible. Hasn't allowed a single pressure. So big takeaways for me. Formation wise, they're not running a lot of 11. I mean, 80% of their formations are with either 2 backs or 2 tight ends on the field. And they've been balanced in the play calling when they do that. So it's been really hard for defenses. There's no tendency here on whether they're going to run or pass out of those formations. So credit to them for that, for sure. It's making it very difficult. There's no tipping pre-snap. Obviously the pre-snap and the play action go a long way as well for Derek Carr. So it's really working here. Now the question becomes, what's the right line? Now, Matt, I know you took a stand when you could get 3 on the Eagles, right? You bet the Eagles at +3. And I get that because this was Saints +3 before the result on Monday night. I will argue that before the market reset, we didn't find out that A.J. Brown was definitely not playing in this game until Lisa Salter's sideline report. So that has to be taken into account. And for me, clearly the Eagles defense is a giant red flag at this point. I mean, to me, coming off last year, the pass defense was really bad. It looks really bad again right now. But last week against the Falcons, what was doubly concerning is that they couldn't stop the run either. They gave up more than 5 yards per carry with what's supposed to be a really good defensive line. So I was skeptical with these new coordinators coming in this year. I don't know, man. I think the defense is a giant red flag. I think if you force Jalen Hurts to throw the ball a lot, he's going to make mistakes. So I would never lay 3 with the Saints at this point. I just don't like taking the worst of the number, but I'm sitting on that Saints +3 right now. And I think still under 3 here with how bad the Eagles defense is. I still might be kind of interested.
Yeah. Our 2.5's available out there, and it's, it's better than if you were trying to buy it off of the 3. So if you're interested, definitely do that. You want to talk about a gross game? Los Angeles Chargers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Here's you a gross game of the week. Take this game, put it on a rocket, fire it into the sun. It is 1.5 in favor of the Steelers at home. 35.5 to 36 is our total. Steven, whatever. I mean, your guess is as good as mine on this game. I mean, like, seriously, like what the range of outcomes in this game is so freaking crazy. I mean, like none of us would be surprised if this game was 9-3 and there were 4 field goals in the game. And none of us would be surprised if for whatever reason, like, Justin Fields ends up running for 112 yards and 2 touchdowns because of the craziness of everything. So I don't know. The foot injury is at least minimally concerning on Herbert's side as well to try to form an opinion. I have no interest in this one whatsoever. I'm sure you've got an angle.
Well, I was just double checking our staff power rankings this week to see if anybody had the Chargers below the Steelers, and nope, I don't see anybody. Everybody has the Chargers above the Steelers, and I think rightfully so. The Steelers are 2-0 and have 1 offensive touchdown this year. So I'm not sure if you take away home field here, this is basically implying that these two teams are the same. And I would prefer to have the better offense with maybe a slightly worse defense than the team with a worse offense and a better defense. Like, I'm going to bet on the offense every time. I'm waiting on Justin Herbert news. He went from DMP to limited on Thursday. If he's good to go, if he gets a full participation on Friday, I might be betting Chargers in this game at plus money just to win the game because I just think they're a better team. I think that Jim Harbaugh is great, and I think this is a very disciplined team. They haven't really had a ton of penalties or turnovers through 2 weeks. So I'm not adjusting the Steelers off of being 2-0. I think they've had a really easy schedule, and they've done it in spite of offensive red flags at this point. This is more just a belief for me. I think the Chargers are at worst a league average team right now, and I don't think the Steelers are a league average team.
Ryan, what say you?
A lot of Spider-Man memes vibes going on in this one, right? Like, just in terms of how they play right now too, they're 30th and 31st in pass rate over expectation. I guess they run a ton. They'd be 31st and 32nd if we took out whatever happened in Green Bay last week. They are just, this is the leader in the clubhouse for this week's nominee of which game is going to be in the fourth quarter while other games are still at the half. Team, they are just going to run. And they both have actually been pretty good defensively. But again, part of it that is tied up in who they played, as we've touched on, opponent, especially early in the season. We are just desperate for stats. We don't think about it as much. So that's impactful too. So, yeah, I mean, give me the team getting points in this situation. Yeah. Again, if you're into teasers, Wong teasers is another great spot. Low total. Chargers you could take through the 3, through the 7 here. Probably make a ton of sense if you really want to get in on this action. Probably a really good spot in terms of maybe some sack props here as well. Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, if he's healthy enough. I mean, Steelers' offensive line is just continue to be a struggle. They're like rotating offensive linemen last week a little bit. Didn't matter too much against a Denver team that struggles to generate pressure. That's not really what the Chargers do. They can get home. So what's going to happen there? Obviously, Justin Fields can take sacks with the best of them. So that would be interesting here. 41% pressure rate allowed. If you can get down on a decent sack number for Mac there. And then a Herbert, obviously that matters. I want to take the Chargers when I know that they got their quarterback in tow. So that's kind of where my lean would be here. And under 36, probably still an okay play, to be honest. So you'd be waiting for some explosives that I just don't think are happening.
I actually mildly, unless this is going to cost you guys bets or something, I kind of hope the Steelers win this game so I can unload the clip on whatever the adjusted win total is on the under. So like, I am just like, I'm really, really, really hoping the second half of this schedule for the Steelers is just Baltimore, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Kansas City, Cincinnati. Like, they could lose every freaking one of those games, like to close out the season. So like, I cannot wait to bet an in season under on this win total. So I'm almost silently rooting for them with my heart, just for what I'm trying to get done here. Houston Texans on the road at the Minnesota Vikings, 2.5 in favor of the Texans, 45.5 to 46. Ryan, I said the Saints were the most surprising team in the NFL so far, probably closely followed here by the Minnesota Vikings, who look competent with Sam Darnold under center there for this team. I guess a little bit of concern about Justin Jefferson this week, so maybe that is some reason to give at least a little bit of pause. But what do we see here in Texans heading into Minnesota?
Yeah, he says he's going to play. I want to believe him. So that's, I think kind of where we're at in the line too, but definitely something to monitor, like, recording on a Friday morning. So this would make a massive impact to the handicap here. If we circle back to the pre-draft discourse, one of the parroted talking points that I actually think was viable was whatever quarterback in that draft was going to land in Minnesota, they were going to be a big winner of the process. All the ancillary parts that impact success, elite play caller, top tier weapons, were already in place. Like JJ McCarthy died so Sam Darnold could live. Like, congratulations to Sam Darnold to revive himself here, because he looks good. And, in picking up on the Giants, that's not really much. We don't care about that too much, but nice home win against San Francisco. Again, they're beat up a little bit, but yeah, you'll take it. He looked sharp, and I think he's going to continue to be put in positions to take care of business. Now, also on the other side here, the other wrinkle is the Minnesota defense. It's kind of like with basketball fans in the audience, I want to equate it to like back in the day with like Jim, Boeheim and the Syracuse defense. Like when you face that zone in the tournament, it's really hard to like scheme for in like a short week, because it's just so different than everything else you see. And that's kind of what Brian Flores does defensively with the way that they, how they align and what they look like pre and post snap, how often they blitz, who blitzes, where they blitz from, like secondary guys, second level stuff versus just bringing their edge rushers and blitzing for all that stuff. So they're kind of hard to scheme against. Now, CJ Stroud, small sample, but he's been really good in his career against the blitz. 4th highest yards per attempt, success rate within the top 10. Looking at since he came in the league, 31 quarterbacks, he's been really good. Tank Dell, really good in these situations against cover 2 and the blitz. Same thing with Nico Collins. So I believe in some of the things that the Vikings are doing. I was interested in them this season. I think they were comfortably the 4th team in that division, but still frisky. Like they could go in and beat some good teams. That's kind of the case here. But I do think what we're seeing with the Texans is legit. This defense is strong. I like the Texans here. Under 3, I think is the right play.
Ryan, it's Cam Akers season here in September 2024. That's pretty wild to say, right?
It's not great. But again, I think it's going to come down to a lot of CJ Stroud here being able to pick him apart.
Mm-hmm. What do you think here, Steven?
I did some number grabbing very early in the week. There was a rogue Vikings plus 3.5 there. I grabbed that number, but that doesn't stop me from reevaluating the game as the week goes on. Injury reports come out, and potentially betting double on the other side if the number moves enough, so I can, have a position on the side I think is right, and also have a chance of, a bit of a middle. So even though I bet Vikings plus 3.5 really early in the week, just evaluating this now that we're at 2, I do have interest in the Texans here, and just philosophically, a couple of reasons why. Texans were really unlucky to not cover against the Bears. They were up 9, fumbled near the goal line. They probably should have covered that game. They dominated them in yards per play. The Vikings were more than a field goal underdog against the 49ers last week. Matt, I don't know if you agree or disagree, but at this point, I have the Texans rated pretty close to the 49ers. Maybe other people haven't moved the Texans up that far, but this roster is loaded. I mean, this roster is every bit as well-rounded as the 49ers and perhaps have the more talented quarterback as well. So I'm not sure if the 49ers were 3.5 on the road against the Vikings, if the Texans should be less than a field goal against the Vikings in the same spot a week later. So I think I'm probably going to add to this position and have some Texans -2 here. And if I do, I'll share it in our free Discord at thelines.com.
Yeah, I like the Texans here as well. And honestly, I like them because of the joke that we just made about the injuries to Joe Mixon and Damian Pierce and all this. Like, maybe Bobby Slowick will quit running the ball on first down every single time and putting the team in 2nd and 9 and 2nd and 8 over and over and over again. Seems like this guy just like every time the offense is flowing with the pass, he's like, well, can't get away from the run, though. It's like, no, but you can, Bobby. You can. If the run's not working and the pass is, you can just pass. It's not illegal. It is something that you can actually do in the NFL. So I almost like the fact that the 2 running backs are down. Maybe we see a more efficient version of this Texans offense out here versus the Vikings.
Matt, one other brief thing we forgot to mention too, like the Vikings still are not fully formed. Jordan Addison still back-to-back DMP, probably not going to play. TJ Hawkinson still on the pup. And now Justin Jefferson looks like he's going to play, but he's dealing with a quad injury as well. And I think the Texans defense is better than the 49ers, could potentially scheme him away. And now you're worrying about or having to hope that Jalen Naylor can carry you across the finish line.
Denver Broncos and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is 6.5 in favor of the Bucs. There are some juice 6.5s out there, so maybe could touch 7. 40.5 to 41 is our total. Steven, I come to you. I let you know that when this did touch 7 earlier in the week, I couldn't, in my heart of hearts, not take the full touchdown with the Broncos against this completely banged up Bucs team. If this Bucs team was healthy, I wouldn't consider it. I would just move on. But you look, and it's like at every single level, there's something going on with the Bucs. And really, all you really can like about this team right now is that you have your quarterback and your 2 receivers that are both healthy, at least for the time being. I look at this and say, do the Bucs win this game? Yes. Is it by more than a touchdown? It's hard for me to get there. And I actually saw a little bit from Bo Nix last week. It wasn't a ton, but I saw a little bit from Bo Nix last week, which gave me some hope that maybe this Broncos offense isn't going to be just a complete, train wreck all season long. I think what you get with the defense could maybe at least a little bit help. I mean, you look at the Bucs last week. It was just Baker to Godwin 7,000 times in a row. It wasn't like it was this crazy wild offense that was doing all this. It was just he threw it to Chris Godwin 1 million times in a row, and Godwin was able to do what he was doing. They were taking advantage of mismatches. So I don't know. The 7 seemed like too much to me. I don't know if I'd get there with 6.5, but what say you?
Yeah, I mean, right now, just big picture, I'm pretty hesitant to want to lay a touchdown with many teams in the league right now with what we're seeing just with league-wide trends. I mean, we're seeing Dan Orlovsky sent out a great tweet just to kind of highlight this. 46% too high safety, highest on record, fewest blitzes on record through 2 weeks, 32nd time of possession per play, slowest since 2008, 41% design runs, highest since 2008. Like, this is not a formula for covering big numbers right now, big picture. And we have to, as bettors, recognize when a result was justified and when a result was unjustified. And clearly, yes, the Bucs won last week, but that is as much of an unjustified win as you will ever see. The Lions ran 83 plays to the Bucs 47. Detroit more than doubled their yardage, and it was just the Lions went 1 of 7 in the red zone, which is also down league-wide. Red zone offense is a big reason why. Third down conversions are a big reason why. So these are not predictive stats year over year. There's probably going to be some positive regression. I've heard some people who've been in the league for a long time that red zone offense is one of the areas that don't get as much work in training camp. So with less of a preseason, that takes longer to come along. So like this is a wonky win for the Bucs as big underdogs, and now they flip to touchdown favorites a week later with a very injured defense, most notably Vita Vea also getting added this week, who's a big force on that
Can't
line.
see back-to-back DNPs. Vea back-to-back DNPs. Antoine Winfield back-to-back DNPs as we record this. So, I mean, like, you're talking about major impact dudes on the defensive side of the ball.
Now, all that said, I need the 7, man. Because Bo Nix has been shit. Bo Nix, it is not out of the range of outcomes at this point that Bo Nix is Bryce Young bad. I mean, he was the 5th quarterback taken in the draft. He's got no game-breaking receivers to work with here. He just lost his right tackle in McGlinchey. So we don't know if he meets the threshold, to use Mo Noira's term, to be a functional quarterback. So I'm willing to at least take a shot and give him a pass because if I'm getting 7, and also because he got dealt a bad hand to start his career against Mike McDonald and against the Pittsburgh Steelers in week 2. This should be easier with the injuries against the Bucs. I don't feel great about it, but 7's a lot, and just philosophically, I'll take the 7.
That 1, 2, 3, 4 115s out there right now that could turn to 7s on these 6.5. So just kind of keep an eye on the board out there. I'm glad you ended it with that, which is why I'm holding back judgment on Bo Nix, because I mean, that's about as tough of the first 2 games as you're going to play as a rookie quarterback. And so let's see what he could do against a banged up Bucs defense here. Ryan, what do you think here of this one?
It's a great point. It's a point I wanted to make too. And while this Bucs defense is definitely banged up and blitz rate might be down across the league, Todd Bowles doesn't give a rip. He's still bringing it, right? They are blitzing at the 5th highest rate in the league. That is his MO. Probably does it even more considering that his team is dinged up, right? And Stephen, great call out too with Mike McGlinchey. Garrett Bowles is not healthy as well. He got picked on last week big time. It's still a problem here. And like Bo Nix, if you want to make the bull case for him moving forward, it would be like, hey, look, this guy's had 3 tough weeks in a row in terms of the defenses and the schematics that he faced compared to some of the other teams in the league. So, but they've just, real small sample, struggled mightily against the blitz so far this season. I think they're going to see a ton of it here. So I would want the full 7 because you guys called it out really well too. Fraudulent wins, like 220 total yards or something for the Bucs last week in Detroit. Like that's not it. I still struggle to run the football. I think you have a situation here where Pat Surtain can probably at least minimize the damage that we see from Mike Evans. So it's probably another spot where, Chris Godwin eats in the slot. That's not super exciting anyway either. So maybe an underlook, or I think the Bucs win the football game, not laying 6.5. Would struggle on the 7, but the 7 would probably be the right play if you got the full 7 on the Broncos.
Bucs going to be a very popular survivor play this week. There'll be a lot of people who are out there rooting for Tampa. Be interesting. I think that there will be some times where maybe they are feeling like maybe they made the wrong decision, but ultimately probably get home. Carolina Panthers and the Las Vegas Raiders. This is 5.5, 39.5 to 40 is our total. Ryan, I'm still alive in the Circus Survivor contest. I had my pick already done on Sunday evening. It was going to be the Raiders, because why wouldn't it be the Raiders? They're getting the Panthers at home, and then the Panthers go off and bench Bryce Young like assholes and like, don't let me get through this week and use the Raiders one time. And so now I have to go back and rethink all the stuff that I thought that I knew and what's going on with all this. But I guess the question does become, what is Andy Dalton worth to this Panthers team? I guess you could look around and say, hey, look, they got Deontay Johnson because he still has a little bit left. They drafted Xavier Legette. I mean, like, it's not like last year where there was nothing but Adam Thielen there. I mean, if you want to try to make any sort of case here for the Panthers at all, they still have that defense that lost their best player. And the Raiders so far, not great. And certainly when you look at the efficiency metrics and the EPA per play stuff and all of that, but if you do the eye test, which I know is always great that we love to do here whenever we analyze football games. But when they started pushing the ball downfield late in the second half, which probably didn't help, bump these stats good enough. But when Gardner Minshew was pressing the ball downfield to Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers, there seemed to be something at least there with this Raiders offense. Max Crosby, still Max Crosby, absolute beast. What do you think about the red rifle? You think there's anything left in the tank?
Can he play defensive end?
Seriously,
because they need someone on the defensive side of the football to do stuff. So I get why there's optimism in the market. Obviously, that got announced. Turn on any odd screen, and you're popping all over the place. And totals going up. Raiders are it's going from 6.5. We're down to like 5 for the most part. I think here now 5.5 in some spots out there if you wanted. I don't know. It's hard. I'm really surprised the Raiders are second in the league in pass rate over expectation, where they had this coach coming in and, old school, former player, Antonio Pierce. We're going to establish it, just talking up Zamir White. And we're going to run behind this offensive line and quarterback issues. We're not sure what we want to do, but we're going to run the football and not just raw passing rate, trying to come back from a deficit against the Ravens. We're talking about adjusted for score and situation, pass rate over expectation. The Raiders are second in the league, which is crazy to me. So again, he's come out and said we want to get back to that. We want to establish the run. So we'll see if there's anything to it this week. But Davante Adams should cook in this spot. The one team in this league so far that's not really doing the too high safety thing, Carolina Panthers. They're playing single high at 75% of their snaps, and they're getting picked on. And guess who's been amazing? He's pretty amazing anyway, but in his career, Davante Adams against single high is absolutely cooked. So I think he's a problem for the Panthers in the spot. I expect maybe the Panthers have more of a pulse to keep pace a little bit. So the total getting pushed out makes a little bit more sense to me. Still kind of on the right side of key numbers if you think that there's something there with the red rifle and they were able to put some sort of pulse together offensively. But I don't know. I still think the Raiders are probably the side now that we've moved off of 6.
Yeah, I think I'm going to put one of the survivor entries on the Raiders, maybe 2, and then one on the. I think I'm going to split them between them and the Browns this week. Just not a lot of future value for either one of those teams. But I'm with you, Ryan. I get it. Does Andy Dalton present you a better chance to maybe move the ball and pick up a few first downs? I mean, that's the thing. It's they were getting no first downs. So, I mean, I guess it is an improvement if you look at it that way, but I don't think it's oh, here comes Andy Dalton. And now the Panthers are going to look like a fully functioning offense in the National Football League here in 2024. I think we've kind of jumped the shark there a little bit on that. Steven, what say you here, Panthers and Raiders?
First of all, it's never the Raiders laying 5.5. We'll start there. I'm never doing that, even if it is against the Panthers, because we do have this unknown with Andy Dalton. And despite the comeback win in the impressive fourth quarter last week for the Raiders, through 3 quarters, they were 28th in EPA per play and 27th in success rate. So this is not a team I really want to lay more than a field goal with against anybody. To me, the more likely outcome, though, in trying to decide, do I want to bet the Panthers to cover with Andy Dalton, who, if you look at any of the splits last year, last 2 years, last 3 years, whatever, he comes out to about a league average quarterback by success rate, which is a much, much better situation than Bryce Young, who's at the bottom of every list. So they will move the ball better, I think, with Andy Dalton. Does that mean they're necessarily going to cover with this horrible defense that Ryan perfectly laid out? I'm not sure. What I'm more confident in is that points are going to be scored in this game. I think Andy Dalton's going to move the ball. Ryan laid out perfectly how the Raiders should move the ball, especially if they're going to pass it as much as they are. The head coach can say as much as he wants, but until I actually see it, I think I have a theory on this, Ryan. I think Luke Getsy had multiple years of having to coordinate Justin frickin' Fields and said, YOLO, man. I'm throwing this ball. I don't care if it gets me fired. I have Davante Adams and Brock Bowers, who looks like the truth, and Jacoby Myers is pretty good too. I'm throwing the freaking ball. The hell with it. I'm not running the ball after what I had to deal with in Chicago. So long story short, I think it's over 40 in this game. That's what I'm more confident in versus taking the Panthers to cover.
On the Brock Bowers thing, there's a guy that scouts players, and I never claimed to be a scout. I don't, that's not what I do, but in all his time scouting, he said he had only given a pre-draft grade of Hall of Fame to 2 guys ever. One was Andrew Luck and the other was Brock Bowers. He's wow. That is how highly I think that this guy is just going to go in and just destroy this league because of his physical ability and stuff. And they did start to figure that out, it seems, last week. And so we'll see if that carries over here again to this week. Miami Dolphins and the Seattle Seahawks. This is 4.5 at home in favor of the Seahawks. 41.5 is the prevailing total out there. We know no Tua Tagovailoa in this game for the Dolphins, but they still have some pretty good players on that side. And then you have the Seattle Seahawks who, yeah, they're winning games. I have my questions about the Seahawks in this one. Steven, what are you going to do with Dolphins and Seahawks?
Yeah, I think I can't just automatically assume that Skylar Thompson is horrible. We haven't seen him in a while. He made it very scary for the Bills in a playoff game. I mean, Ryan, I will change my opinion with more information, that's for sure. But he's at least been in the system, right? It's not like Malik Willis showing up, who's been hideous. And, we haven't seen Skylar Thompson in a few years. And if what we believe about Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel is that maybe the quarterback doesn't matter as much as it does for other teams. I mean, Tua was already number one in the league and getting the ball out of his hands every play. So it's scheme, it's getting the ball quickly to the first read on these plays. So, I mean, Skylar Thompson's probably bad, but he's not a rookie anymore. He's been in the system for a while. So I can't confidently say that he's just doo-doo and this should be, 6.5. I don't know that for sure. And combine that with the Seahawks having a really long injury report this week that may or may not trend in the right direction. I just think there's just so many unknowns in this game, guys, that I just want to stay away.
I took the 4.5. I did it. I'm the guy.
On Skylar or Seattle?
I took the 4.5. Look, I do not like what I've seen from the Seahawks so far this year. I mean, I was pretty high on the Seahawks coming into this season, and this was through 2 weeks. Again, we're very small sample size, but it's like we say small sample size, but there's only 18 games, right? There's only 18 weeks. And so it's like, you kind of have to start forming some opinions on games fairly quickly, because if not, if you wait until week 10, then you've waited too long. So I've not liked what I've seen so far from Seattle. The fact that they've had to scratch and claw to get things done in these first couple of weeks. And here comes Miami with still some pretty damn good players on the offensive side of the ball, that where Skylar Thompson, if there is any sort of scheme, as you mentioned, Steven, should be able to find a little bit of success somewhere along the way in all of this. And so it was the number 4.5 to me. If this was, a field goal or lower, I'm never playing it, but if you're going to get me on the other side of 4, I think that they can do enough to keep this thing fairly close. What say you, Ryan?
I hate that we have two of the young, exciting coaches in the league, and it's Mike McDaniel and Mike McDonald, and it's just going to be confusing at sometimes. They're going to slip up and say the wrong guy. We're talking about both of them all the time because I think they're both great at what they do. That's super annoying. Go back and don't suffer through it. But look through a little bit of what happened in that playoff game in Buffalo, right? The final score tells you that it was 34-31. The Bills won, and Skylar Thompson kept them in that game. 17-zip Buffalo. Josh Allen decided that he was still Cowboy Josh Allen and wanted to chuck the ball around, got picked off twice, fumbled. All of these happened in Miami territory. So Miami started working with some really, really short fields and kept that game close. But he was 18-45 with a real low ADOT, trying to just check down. And they're probably smart, right? You have guys that can make plays after the catch, get the ball into Devin Achane's hands, get it into Tyreek's hands, Waddle, let him kind of cook, right? Kind of mitigate some of the deficiencies along the offensive line, because this Seahawks team can really generate pressure because the scheme is great. We've seen it, and we'll get to it, I think, here in a little bit with what's happening with the Ravens. This is a coach-driven scheme, and he's able to get more out of these players than I think based off of just the talent. So I like the Seahawks. I worry about the injury report. I think they're also another team that I'm surprised at their pass rate over expectation. I think part of it is they just weren't able to really trust Zach Charbonnet to run and carry them last week. They relied a lot on Geno. Offensive line is not doing a great job protecting him, but he's doing a great job at avoiding sacks. That feels maybe like a house of cards that could collapse at some point. But again, tough spot for Miami to travel here. In Seattle, I really like the Seahawks. I don't want to move off my priors too much because I thought last week was going to be a tough spot for Seattle to go in that game and go to New England. Just west to east early in the season, all those different things. So 4.5 is way better than 6.5. Not super interested in Seattle there, but I like Seattle at 4.5 because I want to really buy into this team. And I think that they're going to be a team that's going to be in the mix all season here in the NFC. So Seattle minus 4.5 is a play.
Detroit Lions and the Arizona Cardinals. This is 3 in favor of the Lions, a cheap 3 actually across the industry right now in favor of the Lions. 51.5 is our total. 152 has now popped. Ryan, this seems kind of be like the line in the sand game of the week where everybody's like picking their side. And this is like, oh no, this is it. This is the way it's supposed to go. And let me tell you why. And here we go with all this. I think there's a lot of people who are super high on Detroit coming into the year. Certainly maybe feeling a little let down so far. Yeah, me too. Maybe feeling a little let down with what they've seen so far. Then you come in and you're like, oh, let's look at the top 3 teams through 2 weeks in EPA per play. Oh, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense that the Saints and the Cardinals are like listed, inside the top 3. In that, just a lot of things here that are really interesting. I think Kyler Murray's been playing very well. I think we all knew that Marvin Harrison was going to be able to adapt to the NFL game pretty quickly. It seems like that's going to be the case. I just don't know if we're getting a little too pumped up what we've seen through 2 weeks from Arizona. This is a very interesting game. I have no bet, and I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about it.
Go back to the joke that worked previously. Can Kyler play defensive end?
Yeah.
Arizona's offense is clicking. They lead the league in yards per drive. They trail only the Saints in points per drive. Kyler threw some absolute dimes last week. He made some old school Kyler-esque plays to buy time in the pocket. I like Drew Petzing, and I think he's obviously significantly more creative as a play caller than what we've seen from Cliff Kingsbury over the last handful of years there in Arizona. People really want to believe in this Cardinals team. I think they wanted to in the preseason. We saw a little bit of pulse from them last year once Kyler came back. I just don't think the defense can hold up. I don't see any difference makers. Budda Baker's a baller. But it's just not enough. He's been a baller his entire time there, and they've struggled. So at 3, a juicy 3, I absolutely love it. I think we're giving too much credit to Arizona because we kind of wanted to buy into them a little bit, picking off a really, really depleted Rams team that's bad if they were healthy. So they're getting way too much credit, I think, in the market for that. This was 4.5 in the look aheads. I get it. The Lions play with their food and let the Buccaneers steal that one a little bit last week. I again don't want to move off of my priors. I didn't expect the Lions defense to click on all cylinders right away. I think they're going to figure it out eventually. And I'm really excited about having a new element with Jameson Williams here. Again, they'll figure out what they need to do and how to incorporate Sam Laporta. This offensive line is going to maul the Cardinals front. And I just don't know what the Cardinals do about it. They're going to have to keep up. It's going to have to be a track meet. Now we're on the wrong side of the total at 51.5. Or maybe you think we're on the right side of the total at 54, right? So depending on what you think here. So I think there's probably a lot of points here. I think the Lions on the side, especially getting plus 100 or so here on the 3. I like it quite a bit.
We might get 2.5. If we get 2.5, it's going to have to go in my same deal. Man, I had the Lions. I was so high. No, I was pumping the tires for the Lions in every single which way that you could possibly do it. And so the fact that I could get 2.5 against the Cardinals, to me, in a game that's going to be played in perfect weather conditions and all of that, being inside of a dome seems great. I'm sure Steven's going to come in here and tell us why Kyler Murray's MVP.
Hell no.
Whoa, hell no, he says. All right.
I'll give you one reason why I'm nervous about the Lions, and then about 18 why you should be buying low on them here. The one reason is Jared Goff's looked bad. There's no way around that. He's looked bad, and the metrics bear it out. He's been bottom 10 in the league.
RIP my Goff MVP tickets.
Yeah, so, goodbye.
Yeah.
Ben Johnson tried to take advantage of all the Bucs injuries in the secondary and went way too pass heavy last week. He's not going to do that again, especially in this matchup. All the matchup things Ryan said. Look ahead line was 4.5 for the Lions. I found a 2.5 minus 112 this week. I pounded it. I got rid of my -3 at another book, took a tiny little loss, and made up for it with the -2.5. I think we may get 2.5 here and there. There's going to be quick Lions buyback, but if you're looking for it going into the weekend, I think you're going to find it. Even if you had to go under alt spreads where I did and find it, you may find like a -112, -115. I'm all over the Lions at that price. We talked about how last week was so fluky. And if you're watching the clip form, I'll just give you the cliff notes here. The Lions went 1 of 7 in the red zone last week after being one of the best red zone teams in the NFL last year. That's going to positively regress, especially when they play a defensive front that is bad. I mean, let's look at what the Cardinals have done to, in my opinion, not warrant this big of a move in market ratings. week 1, yes, they got up early, but if not for a kick return touchdown, they should have lost to the Bills by double digits. Last week, they played a mash unit of an NFL team and took advantage of it. There is nothing here to me that justifies that the Cardinals should be moved this high in market ratings or the Lions to be moved down this much in market ratings. And Matt, I'm not a big trends guy, but the fact that in Dan Campbell's tenure, coming off a loss, they are 8-0 straight up and 8-0 against the spread. I don't know if you got to handicap every game and look at the matchups and everything, but at the very least, that trend tells me that this team is going to be extra focused and locked in to give a good effort in this game. So I like the Lions a lot this week. I really do.
Yeah, it seems like you go out, you got the two-headed monster at running back. You like just beat down the defensive line, like Ryan said, and then once they think it's coming, then like Jameson Williams goes for the 75-yard touchdown. I like the line. The 2.5 is going to come. I'm going to be able to get it in there. And
don't forget Aiden Hutchinson looked like J.J. Watt last week too.
Yes.
Don't forget that.
There's also that as well too. San Francisco 49ers on the road at the Los Angeles Rams. This is 6.5, 43.5 is our total. No Christian McCaffrey, no Deebo Samuel. Doesn't matter here against this Rams team that we don't have enough time to sit and list all the injuries that are going on here with the Rams. It would take us the whole rest of the podcast. So, Steve, I mean, look, there's going to be some people who play the Niners in Survivor. There's going to be some people who play them, I think, in pick'em pools. I don't know if you're feeling super confident. And this one feels like a very weird one where the 49ers are either super clunky without McCaffrey and Deebo out there, or because of what's going on with this Rams team on both sides of the ball, then like the 49ers prove to us that it doesn't really matter that they're not out there, and they score 35 points against this team and just go and just absolutely wreck them. The bet I got in my account, I did put in Ayuk over 61.5 receiving yards. Without CMC, without Deebo out there, he's going to get 75 yards. I would be shocked if he did not get 75 yards in this game. I thought that was the most mispriced line when that opened of the week. So got that one into the account, but that's kind of where I sit right now. What say you?
He might get 15 targets because George Kittle was also a midweek downgrade on the injury report and looked like he's not going to play either. So early in the week, this was a slam dunk teaser leg for me. Now it's not. This is not the place to play the Niners in a divisional game, missing 3 of their 4 weapons. It's a stay away from the Niners for me. The only question becomes, do I want to take the points with the Rams not having Puka and Cooper Kupp? And at least they'll have both of their tackles back this week. So that's a positive. I don't know if it matters if the interior of the line is still a mash unit as well. Sean McVay has said they're going to have to get out of 11 personnel, which he basically runs exclusively in his tenure there. So, there's at least the element of surprise here with the Rams. At the current number as we record here at 6.5, it's a stay away for me. 7 and higher, I do start getting interested in the Rams here. I think the Niners just want to run it with Jordan Mason and get the hell out of here, to be honest with you.
Ryan, what do you like about this one or hate about this one, or what's going on? It's just an odd game. We're sitting here talking about like the 49ers, but it's not really the 49ers. It's like the shell of the 49ers.
Yeah, we still have Kyle Shanahan, right? And he's had some success in this matchup historically against against Sean McVay. And yeah, I mean, they're depleted for sure, but I think the Jordan Mason thing is what we see here. I think you're going to see a ton of him here. They're able to kind of dictate up front and get things done. Rams still like giving up a ton of explosives through the air and on the ground. So I think really the Niners are going to be able to scheme ways to, Jennings or whatever it ends up being, like whoever's left here. But yeah, you guys are right. I mean, alts on Ayuk make a ton of sense here. I think 6.5 is probably the right side. Again, this is if, I'm forced to bet all the games. If my name is Steven.
Right.
My name's Ryan. I don't have to bet all the games. So I actually will sit this one out. But I think the Niners are probably the right side. It's just really hard, even at home, in a spot where, I don't know, the Rams don't have, it's not like the Chargers per se, but I don't know the Rams have a ton of home field advantage, especially when they're playing the Niners in that situation. Yeah. So you'll probably have a pretty good Niners crowd making the trip there. I like the Niners side.
All we can be sure of, I'll set the over under at 5.5 stadium fights in this one. Like,
nice,
as far as like videos that come out of like guys just punching each other in the stadium and things like that. Like I'll take the over on that, by the way.
Yeah.
Ravens and the Cowboys. This is 1.5. We've moved to pick at one of the sites now, actually, here in this one. It's the ones are in favor of the Ravens on the road. 47.5 to 48 is our total. Ryan, the last time we saw both of these teams, they were losing, and one maybe a little bit worse than the other, or maybe not. I guess it all just depends on how you look at it. I am very curious about both of these teams moving forward. I was a little lower on the Ravens entering the season than market was anyway, and then now I don't want to have confirmation bias and then start to think that they're worse than they truly are. I don't think they're a bad team, but it doesn't help that they've started out the way that they have. And then the Cowboys last week, I said the game was over before basically it even started. So I don't know what we really saw in them. Who are these teams? What are these teams? And what do you see in this game?
I'm struggling with that too, Matt. I left both these teams out of the playoffs in our divisional previews over Move the Line for 4-4. And I don't want to take a week 3 victory lap, that's for sure, but I don't feel terrible about it. Look, I mean, massive changes with the Ravens. When you pull out not just, I think we touched on it in week 1, not just the defensive coordinator, but 2 of his other assistants that went and became defensive coordinators in other spots. So in a team that felt like it just in terms of raw talent, looking at the depth chart, they massively overachieved last year in terms of their way to generate pressure. Secondary, they had injuries, didn't seem to matter. Whatever Mike McDonald did, it worked for them. They were outstanding. And now you take all that away, and we're seeing that they're really struggling to generate pressure. Mm-hmm. You take out multiple starters along the offensive line, and you think, all right, we're just going to bring in Derrick Henry, and it's not going to really matter here because we're still going to be able to run the football and dictate tempo and all these different things. And it's a problem. I mean, Max Crosby won that game, right? Yeah. Christian Wilkins was a problem, but he was able to dictate that second half and absolutely flip that game on its head. Well, Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence are also pretty damn good. And I think that they could be problematic here too. So I also just don't really believe in the Cowboys. They cannot run the football. They still try to run the football, but they have no explosives. Zeke is just as dusty as you can get at this point. No missed tackles forced, no runs of 10 plus yards. They're not giving Rico Dowell any more work. So it's just a lot of pressure on basically a single combination with Dak and CeeDee Lamb. The good news here is that the Ravens have allowed a 68.4% success rate to opposing slot receivers this season, second highest in the league behind only the Commanders. They've given up a ton of explosives in the past game too, almost double the explosive rate that they gave up last year through the air. So I think CD alts are interesting. Zay Flowers on the other side also can come back and work. He's going to see a ton of zone. His yards per route run against zone versus man coverage is a 1.5 yards higher. So he's going to eat here a little bit too. So maybe a prop angle with those 2 receivers, because I think both teams probably struggle to run the football. So maybe an underlook too. Again, I'm not sure what these teams are. And the Ravens schedule, they get Buffalo next week too. I think it's in Baltimore, but that's tough. This Ravens opening schedule is pretty brutal. So I kind of want to wait and see what happens there. I want to play the prop angles instead of anything in the game.
Yeah. I think that there is a real chance this team is 0-5 and everyone is losing their mind. I mean, Dallas, Buffalo, Cincinnati, next 3 games. I took a little piece, and I don't expect it to get home because there are some really bad teams in the NFL, but I took a piece at a very, very long number of last winless team on Baltimore because they very well could lose these next 3 games, and then we'll see kind of what's going on there. But I mean, you're getting, if you're getting 80-1 on something like that, I mean, it's, I thought I'd take a snort on it. Do I think that they're going to actually be the last one? Probably not, but worth it, Steven. What do you think of these 2 teams? What do you think of this game in particular?
This Ravens start has made me so salty that Lamar Jackson won MVP last year with that nonsensical Heisman-like voting that we had. He was nowhere near the best quarterback in the league last year. I have a pretty simple philosophy when it comes to the Cowboys. When they play a bad team, I'm interested in betting on them. When they're playing a good team, I'm interested in betting on the good team. Mm-hmm. And this implies to me that the Ravens are 2.5 to 3 points better than the Cowboys on a neutral field, which I'm not sure anybody would agree with at this point. So at plus money, maybe getting a point or a point and a half. I'm finger on the trigger for Dallas right now, to be honest with you, because of the O-line issues, because of the secondary issues with the Ravens. What's holding me up is that through 3 quarters, the defense was top 5 in week 2. And then the fourth quarter, they were bottom 5. So is that predictive? Is that just who they are over the course of a game? Or did they just have an unlucky fourth quarter against the Raiders? So this is the hardest game for me to handicap all week. But if you're in a pick 'em pool or something and you got to make a pick, like it'd be Cowboys or nothing for me here.
Ryan, I think you kind of painted the picture pretty perfectly. Like, I just hate both of these offenses. So it's like, I just don't know. Like, I hate both of them. So I hate this game because I hate both these offenses. So yeah, tough for me to make a call there. Sunday night football, Kansas City Chiefs and the Atlanta Falcons. This is an expensive 3 in favor of the Chiefs. 46.5 is our total. Steven, look, I think the Chiefs are in an interesting spot right now. I think there's some real issues for a team that I know will be there at the end, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be now. You lose Pacheco. Kelsey hasn't figured out a way to get involved. They haven't manufactured touches for Worthy yet. I think that there's some question marks here about this Chiefs team, and I don't know for sure the Falcons got it figured out last week. I'm not going to say that. You know, you did all the offseason content with me. I was super high on the Falcons coming into this year, so I kind of want to believe that they did, but I'm not going to go ahead and say for sure that they did. It does look like Cousins knocked some of the rust off at least a little bit last week as well. When this was on the other side of 3, I hesitated and didn't get the Falcons ticket in my account. I really wish I would have. 3.5 might pop again. And I think if they do, I think on principle, I might have to put in a Falcons ticket here on this one. How are you looking at this one?
So if we're not too anchored by what we saw in week 1 from Atlanta, where Kirk Cousins just was not under center except for a couple of plays, you know, the market ratings had this as a flat 3 coming into the year. Falcons +3 coming into the year. The Chiefs offense, to me, looks more like the 2023 version so far. Defenses are forcing them to go the long way, to be methodical. Mahomes is 31st in average depth of target through 2 weeks, despite the hopes of a more explosive offense. That's going to take up time and shorten games and possessions. So in a situation like that, I get a little nervous laying more than a field goal. If you look at the run defense as well, I mentioned earlier in the show how impressed I was with the Falcons' rushing offense against what we thought was a pretty stout Eagles defensive line. The Chiefs are dead last in success rate stopping the run through 2 weeks. Atlanta was top 10 in week 2 running the ball. They mixed up their tendencies. They weren't tipping what run or pass or, you know, more play action.
Used Algier a little bit more as well, like got him involved a little bit more. Yeah.
So I think the Falcons look more, I'm at least more confident now that the Falcons are closer to what we thought they were going to be coming into the year. And in a primetime game, getting more than a field goal against the Chiefs offense that's content to be methodical, moving the ball down the field. I think I like the home dog here if I'm getting 3.5 or more. And I did bet 4 earlier in the week. It's not available, but I think I would still recommend 3.5 or more on the Falcons.
How you see this one, Ryan?
Yeah, it's tricky. Hey, guess who is last in the league in pressure rate? Oh, it's the Falcons. It's an annual tradition. Uh-oh. They're always terrible at getting pressure. They don't get home. So yeah, Kansas City is going to have to be methodical. They'll probably have to dink and dunk a little bit. They probably have success doing it, to be honest. Yeah. I think a clean pocket for Mahomes is terrifying, regardless of what's happening and whether he's, throwing the ball, 15 yards down the field or 6 yards down the field. The problem, and I think you did a good job highlighting it there, Stephen, is the Falcons' run game has been really good. They are, first of all, the explosive ability of Bijan is incredible. He leads the league with missed tackles forced. His elusive rating is through the roof. The one thing that's massively different this year, the offensive line in terms of run blocking has been fantastic. They are averaging 2.2 yards before contact per carry. That's a full yard up over last year. And you give one of the best, most dynamic running backs in the league a chance to operate before he gets hit. That becomes pretty interesting. So under is a viable look here. If we start to move up a little bit, maybe we get a little bit of that too. If we get the Falcons at 3.5, I also think the right side, if we get through that, because it looks like -120s out there, some -115s too. So we maybe get that 3.5 back. do have some interest there in the Falcons, even though I still believe in the Chiefs long-term, because I think they could be able to dictate this game, run the football, and just kind of, maybe keep Mahomes on the sideline a little bit.
Yeah. The 3.5 just seems like a Chiefs field goal win, doesn't it though? Like you win your ticket, like when it's like Butker goes out there and he's kicking a 48-yarder to win the game, like his time expires. It just like it kind of just feels like the way that game is going to go. So yeah, I like the other side as well. If we can get to the 3.5, which we probably will, it'll flash, it seems like, between now and then, that we can go ahead and get that into our accounts. Want to thank Ryan Noonan for joining us here. 4 for 4, guys. If you haven't gone over there, check out everything they do over the site. Been one of the staples for me for a very, very long time, as well as Steven. So be sure to go in, take in all the great work that they do over there. And if you are watching this on the YouTube channel, everything we do absolutely free. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button, and let us know in the comment section how terrible we were at picking some of these games. Like we're always in for the criticisms, and let us know which sides that we're just completely wrong on in all of these things. Appreciate it, guys, and good luck on all your week 3 bets.